Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine, and I will be the host and moderator for this evening's live Facebook chat. And hey, we're in the virtual world, and who knows what that ghost in the machine was all about, but here we are live. For those of you who might need reminding, here's a quick reminder of what Over the Bridge is all about. Over the Bridge is a Canadian nonprofit organization that empowers music and showmakers to reclaim their lives from mental health and addiction struggles so that they can continue making the music that we all know and love and appreciate. And tonight we're continuing the Over the Bridge chat, the OTB chat that's been going on for a while, but this is our first Facebook Live OTB chat. So not only will we be selecting questions that have been sent in advance, we will be answering some questions that you put in the Facebook Live chat. So please, as you listen to the conversation, add in comments, questions, and certainly for our panelists, Martin and Alana, if you have specific questions, put it in there and we'll do our best to answer all of them. Just to get clear on the purpose of tonight's show, it's really to have a dialogue. It's to continue the conversation about mental health and wellness and addiction recovery. It's to continue to raise awareness, to reduce stigma, and really to continue to develop and support the community within the music industry and talk openly, transparently, and in a safe way about some really important issues that have always been there, and certainly throughout this pandemic time have really risen, I think, to the fore. And it's a tremendous opportunity for us to have this conversation tonight. We feel very important to stress here that none of us are mental health or addiction recovery professionals. And so what we're talking about here is really our own experiences and opinions. We're going to be chatting with each other, answering some questions. And that if you are currently seeking or getting support from a health professional in this space, we encourage you to continue to do that. And if something resonates with you tonight and you want to reach out to seek some professional help, there'll be lots of links in the show notes. And certainly overthebridge.org is a fantastic hub of resources. So we encourage you to go there as well. That's the opening blurb. Let's get started and introduce ourselves. So first off, my name is Catherine Harrison. I run a performance and behavior change consulting business here just outside of Toronto called Purple Voodoo. I'm also a musician and a singer-songwriter, author, a coach and facilitator, and have been working in the mental health and wellness space for over 20 years. With me this evening, I have Alana Peri. And Alana is an expressive, I'm going to do you justice, Alana, and read this.
Oh, thank you.
Alana is an expressive arts therapist and educator, currently also residing in Toronto. And as of just last month, she is the new executive director and business owner of Purple Carrot's drama studio. We both dig purple, a company devoted to inclusive and accessible arts-based programming. And they specialize in building social and communication skills within neurodiverse communities. They empower their students by helping them recognize and develop their individual strengths and by valuing their unique talents. Alana is also a post-secondary professor at Mohawk College in Hamilton, in Ontario, teaching postgrad studies in post-traumatic stress disorder and expressive arts. And her goal is to educate, empower, and provide expressive arts therapy to anyone willing to play, share, and explore. And if that wasn't enough awesome stuff, Alana has also worked at Live Nation Entertainment, the back and front end of venue and event operations for the past 7 years, and is well-versed in the music and entertainment industry. So welcome, Alana.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here. And next up, the one and only Martin Atkins. Martin is the definition of entrepreneurial activity in the cultural arts endeavors, with more than 35 years in the music business, spanning genres and borders and industries. Martin was member of Public Image Limited and Killing Joke. He founded the industrial supergroup Pigface, The Damage Manual, and Murder Inc., and has contributed to 9 Inch Nails, for which he has a Grammy, congratulations, and Ministry. He is the owner of Invisible Records, a Mattress Factory recording studios, and is the author of Tour Smart, Welcome to the Music Business, You're Fucked. Can we say that on Facebook Live? And Band Smart, and is the new music industries coordinator at Millikan University in Decatur, Illinois, which is Chicago, for those of us here in Toronto. He's a producer, drummer, documentary filmmaker, DJ, and father of 4. And we are thrilled to have Martin joining us this evening.
Thank you. I should point out, I am a terrible DJ. I will destroy your wedding.
We will add that to the description next time. It's not just DJ, it's terrible DJ.
Oh, yeah.
So as we get started, we have so many great questions. We will add that to the description next time. It's not just DJ, it's terrible DJ.
Just to reiterate.
So as we get started, we have so many great questions. Back-end producer.
I will destroy your wedding.
Okay.
What's that?
I said, I think we need to mute something, over the bridge producer.
What?
This is the fun part of virtual events, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. What's going on?
We think we need to mute you, back-end producer guy. And I don't even know how to do that. There we go.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's get us started. We've got tons of questions that people sent in advance. But before we get to that, Alana, I'd love to just get top line thoughts on topic tonight and some just musings on how you might think people are dealing with not just the music industry, but certainly the last 7 or 8 months of said music industry.
For sure. It's been a really tough go for everybody, but first and foremost, thank you to Over the Bridge, and thank you for providing conversations like this and resources like this, because ultimately that's what we all need right now. We just need a little bit extra support. And I think anybody in the music and entertainment industry right now is kind of like, what? Because we're so used to that fast pace, go, 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 people on tours kind of just getting picked up from wherever they were and getting sent back home. It's a really wild ride for everybody, especially the last 7 months, which is a complete opposite to what we're all used to. So I'm just very glad that we can have conversations like this and yeah, open up the discussion, provide resources, and be supportive of one another, because anyone and everyone can just use a lending hand.
Yeah, thanks. Martin, top line thoughts? I think he's frozen.
Oh, I think he might be frozen.
He might be frozen in space. Okay, well, you know what, Alana, until Martin gets back, we'll get him to, maybe he's off being a terrible DJ somewhere.
Probably had a wedding to go and DJ. Yeah, it suddenly came up.
Gotta make a living somehow these days.
Gotta do what you gotta do. Virtual weddings, yeah.
One of the things that we were chatting about the other day in preparation for the conversation was based on a few questions that came in advance about folks, you know, being part of a road family. You're on tour, you're tired, you've got the high of the shows, you've got the insane hustle and bustle of producing an amazing event every day. Mm-hmm. And of course, the cultural, I might even say expectations around the partying.
Sure.
And there were a few folks who sent questions around, you know, hey, I'm trying to actually live a healthy lifestyle, whether I'm in recovery or whether I'm just trying to be healthier and not use substances on the road. And I get a lot of, hey man, just suck it up, or what's the big deal, or why do you have, you know, you think you're so special. And we were talking about the stigma that continues to exist really in the music industry around kind of that cultural narrative of if you're going to be a cool music guy or gal, you got to play the part.
Oh, for sure. It's almost expected of you. And if you don't do it, but one thing I just want to mention is that although we are speaking about being within the music industry, this applies, everywhere. It seems almost odd to people if you go to an event and you say, you know what, actually, I'm not drinking. And it's just kind of like, you feel you have to explain yourself. And that kind of has to end right then and there. It's just like, it doesn't matter if it doesn't involve you. It doesn't necessarily matter if that person isn't hurting anybody. Then what they're doing doesn't really, yeah, it doesn't matter to you of what they're doing. But going back to this being in the music industry, society has had kind of a history of almost dehumanizing anybody that is an artist or a creative or a celebrity or somebody who goes out to the entertainment world. And we have this expectation. And then when you're the team that goes to support that and builds that, that expectation trickles. So everybody feels like they need to do something. They've got to be in with someone and do whatever it takes just to fit in or keep going. Even sometimes it turns into a reliance, and it seems almost too hopeful just to say, but it's when you start to provide other resources and conversations about other things to do, and to let people know, this is how I live my life, this is how I go about it, or no thank you kind of thing, and that's the end of the story. Stick up for yourself and kind of say no. Then it becomes less of this ideal that you must do this, you must do that, there's the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and that's the life. But it's like, okay, yeah, okay, but is it necessary? I mean, of course I enjoy having a drink here and there, especially at an event, or you're excited. Of course, it's celebratory, but it doesn't have to become a lifestyle, because then it becomes toxic, and it's draining. And I think the goal is to get rid of that toxicity, because the less kind of negativity and toxic environment that you're surrounding, and the easier it is to be open and honest about what you really need, or what you really gotta say or do, or what you need to live your life healthfully.
Yeah, I think that sort of alkagenic culture exists, as you say, not just within the music industry or within the arts and entertainment industry, but everywhere.
Of course.
And you know, I think there's a shift towards greater awareness and greater education, that not everyone can in fact just have a couple drinks now and again. Not everyone can in fact just have a toke now and again. That substance use disorder is a medical situation. And I heard a great line the other day that said, it's not an excuse, but it is an explanation. And you and I were talking before about the combination, the balance of individual accountability for your own mental health and wellness, finding support and the right tools, etc., but also having the tools and the content and the language to explain why you're making those choices to people who still reside in a culture who don't get it.
Exactly.
Right.
Sure. And it's even something we saw as Toronto was locking down, and it was, what's an essential service? And people were wondering why the LCBO was still open. And a lot of people didn't understand that oh good, Martin's back. But the reasoning is that the withdrawals of people who have addiction to alcohol are much greater than, just providing them with the service and access, because hospitals were not able to deal with the withdrawal symptoms, because we're currently dealing with the global pandemic. And I think we just kind of need to shift our perspective to, less blame and less, kind of tearing people down and, re-stigmatizing what's going on, and understanding that it's a situation that needs to be dealt with. And the only way to deal with it is just to support one another and have those resources, like you were saying. And it is an odd balance of both personal accountability, knowing that you have your own resources to take care of what you need, but sometimes you're going to need to have to get support from somebody else, and they need to be equipped with how to deal with whatever it is that you're dealing. So it's a little bit of give and take and balance in both ends. And yeah, I think just little things like this, just having conversations, opening it up, that's the start of it all. And that will continue to hopefully benefit artists and tour managers and production managers and all of the people in between who make it happen, benefit them a little bit more to be able to just say, okay, we're here to support one another for this, and we have the resources to do so.
Yeah. Thanks, Alana. Martin, you're back. Did you go DJ a wedding?
I got bounced off of a hard line.
Oh,
I have no idea how that happened. So I'm on wireless, so we'll see what happens.
there you go. So just to repeat my question before you got bounced, top line thoughts on the conversation topic today, and really just about the challenges of focusing on mental health and wellness and recovery, you know, when you're a touring musician or even just a gigging musician in a city.
Well, the thing that kind of keeps me going, sometimes I'll tweet. Sometimes all you can do is the dishes, you know, because I think we tend to go, the World Wide Web is fantastic, but we can't solve sometimes our own problems, let alone anybody else's, God forbid the world's problems. And so I'm like, well, you could do the dishes, and then the dishes will be done, you know, and in this great big world with all the shit going on, if you can just do these little tiny things, and I think people are ready to hear that, you know, to try, in a sense, it's like keeping it local, keeping it really local. And if we can reach out and build community, then that support that, then it is there to support us.
The weddings are calling.
Oh,
They
Christ.
Christ.
He's gonna be really sad.
Yeah, I was really excited. I had a follow-up question for Martin. I was, oh, there he is.
Oh, you look exasperated.
Did I get bounced again?
No, you're cool.
Okay.
We can see you, but you were frozen just for a second.
I'm following the bouncing ball. Yeah, don't do that. You're going to mess me up. Okay, so just adding to that, Martin, what would be something that would be analogous to doing the dishes? Like if you're just trying to focus on keeping that mental health and wellness in balance, what's a good practical doing the dishes for folks to consider?
Well, so I'm looking behind me at a screen print I made in '94. And something I did was I came back from a really kind of frightening meeting with a coffee company I work with. And they were literally paralyzed with fear for the lockdown, their stores, their employees. And I came back here and I printed a new coffee bag, just a brown paper coffee bag. And I printed another one, and I printed another one, and I put 200 of these bags on a line with clothes pegs to dry, and it kind of got rid of my anxiety because I had this repetitive thing that I was doing. And then I was able to help them with these coffee bags and remind myself. I started off by printing one paper bag, you know, which would also be useful to kind of breathe into and stop an anxiety attack. But I kind of was very surprised at how I felt after dealing with some anxiety in a productive way. And if we can all get plugged back into the creative people we are, instead of, I'm a bass player and I can't play my bass in a stadium. Right, okay, but you're a creative person and you can't do a show and get applause and throw roses into whatever you do, but you can still connect with people. Here we are connecting now. And it, we strip it down to that and the connections, and we can still do that really well. And just incrementally, it all helps and gets us through.
Yeah, thanks. And Alana, I mean, this seems to be the sweet spot of what you do, right? Is encouraging people to express themselves through the arts. Any additional thoughts or comments to that?
100%. As you were speaking, Martin, I'm just sitting here being like, yes, you are preaching to the choir right now. This is exactly it. Because as we're creating things, we're creating these new ways of working in our brain, and we're starting to deal with things internally instead of verbally. And sometimes that's a little bit more helpful than, talking things out. Doing is actually, for me, it's baking, which is why I also run in addition. So it's running and baking. Those are my creatives. But you need those outlets, because sometimes that's what's accessible and that's what's going to work when you have something to focus on and you're doing it. And then there's an end result too. And once you get to that end result, you're kind of realizing what that process was like and how you got from point A to point B. And ultimately that's exactly what I do. But we can all do this in our everyday. We can find one thing that's like, okay, we got from here to here, and there was a result. There was something from it, and just kind of debrief on that and reflect on it and see what makes us feel good. And whether that's writing something down and then ripping it up or tossing it in the fire, or singing a song really loud, or screaming at the top of your lungs, whatever that may be, it doesn't matter. But it's a release of what's going on internally, externally, without using any kind of verbal association. And yeah, there are so many little ways that you can incorporate that into your day. And Martin, I absolutely love that it's a coffee bag for you. That's just like, that's so simple and so effective.
Well, like you say, if you can do one, you can do two. If you can do two, you keep going. And that sounds like a tangible tip that people might be listening to, because maybe they start the conversation connecting to what Martin was saying, which is like, I'm a bass player, or I'm a guitar player, or I'm a roadie. This is what I do for a living. I'm a sound guy. And maybe the one tip is, if you don't already know what that one thing is that you can kind of just get into and create and access that internal stuff, is to reflect. Is there any specific reflection exercises, Alana, that you could maybe recommend, or even Martin, like in terms of helping people, especially now when people feel more isolated, I think, than ever? Is there anything that they might do to even find out what that thing is?
Yeah. Writing is such an incredible tool. In front of me, I even have my journal, because it's just so close to me, and it's personal. If I want to share it, I can share it, but most of the time I don't. So chances are I'll rip it up and deal with it and throw it away. And then I have this exhale, it's that kind of expression. And sometimes maybe it's just doodling. It's just letting my body move and writing out and doing something. It's just letting it go, kind of thing. And yeah, that it's just so simple. Writing, doodling, any of that. And then when you're ready to release it, you release it. You release it by throwing it in the garbage, or you're out for a smoke, light it up with your lighter, and then it's gone forever. And it sounds simple, but it's actually very cathartic to just kind of do it, release it, let it go, and move on. And yeah, it's surprising. And or even little things like just making a list. This is what I'd like to do. And even if you scratch off one thing, and that one thing was waking up and brushing your teeth, then hooray, like that's huge. That's big. But sometimes it just takes putting a pen to paper and putting that down, and then actually visualizing it, seeing it, and doing something about it. So
Yeah.
Actually, Alana, I have a question about list making.
mm-hmm.
So I describe, so sometimes in the morning, well, most times in the morning, when my mind is going like this,
Yeah,
I'll write things down. And I definitely feel myself switching to ADD, ADHD, crazy think loops, to simply being the worker guy, rolling up my sleeves and accomplishing these tasks, not thinking about how to accomplish each task, but not thinking about the interwoven tasks and how they relate to each other. I do that in the morning, and then I feel like I'm switching to task completion person.
That's amazing. So you get to physicalize that feeling of release, which is incredible. And as you're doing it, you can prioritize, and that kind of helps you as it's a skill. Then you're building a skill. Okay, I know what's important to me, this and that, and this is how I execute my day, which is that's absolutely incredible. And you've kind of answered the question for me, Martin. That's awesome. Thank you.
Well, speaking of questions, I think that conversation itself actually answered about 6 questions that had been sent in previously. So I'm going to shift this specifically to you, Martin, and ask, I guess, a macro question, which is, what are some of the specific mental health issues that people working in the music industry face, part 1? And then if you would, share your own experience, as a working musician, and as you say, for decades.
Oh my goodness. The mental health issues are, they're everywhere, of course. And I think that it's a strange situation in which people like stand-up comedians, right? We all take these energies and these forces, and we kind of like a bunch of different crayons, we eat them and we shit out some multicolored thing that people like. That's how we entertain. Look at my multicolored thing, and it's a result of all of these forces within us. I've seen everything from just recreational. Some drugs have just become harder. When we were coming up in the 80s, briefcases full of coke were just like, yeah, DeLorean did it. Like it was just like, we've got the guitars, we've got the equipment, we've got the tour bus. Where's our dealer? It was part of what we were doing. Looking back on that period now, we were all self-medicating to such a degree. And I don't know if the release of a stage performance relieves that tension, or the drugs camouflage the problems going in. I know performers at a very high level who puke as they're walking on stage. Why are we still doing this? What is the, your body's telling you something. And so, but where this all gets very interesting for me is as we work on ourselves and we work on our situations, what do we end up with on stage? Just a bunch of happy people who aren't entertaining? It's there are degrees to all of this, and I think as we all get more aware of the situations that we're all in and the problems that we all have, then we get to be able to try and tap into these energies whilst working on ourselves as well. I don't know if I answered the question.
Yeah, kind of, yes. And I have another one for you, though. And Alana, please feel free to jump in too, is because I think, you alluded to the difference of a working musician is not the same as, a working insert, go to office 9 to 5 here. You're in, especially a touring musician, you're actually working in a celebratory, crazy, inflammatory, utopian, like high energy, holy moly, every single night. Right. So I think the notion of, and we talked about this before, Martin, like, humans just we're just not wired to actually do that 200 nights a year, right? And be on the road and be eating horrible food and barely sleeping. And then, so to your point, self-medicating to just keep the engine going so that you can do it. And then again, back to that cultural piece we talked about, Alana, right? which is the expectation of like, yeah, gig bag, Coke bag. And then that became, I think, a paradigm for aspiring musicians that if I wanted to be that, I also had to do that, you know?
That we emulate our heroes, you know. Most of the drug stuff you see the results of, but you also see our heroes, our pop stars, just being extremely rude to people. So you see people coming up emulating that behavior, and it's like, you know, neither the drugs nor the rudeness will get you very far, you know.
Yeah.
But the problem, one of the things I like about being on the road for 45 days straight, you're in a tunnel, and literally, you know, you go into a hotel. I find myself on the wrong floor of a hotel. I don't know my room number, and that's actually quite good, because it's our jobs to help the audience remove themselves from their daily reality. So it's our jobs to make Tuesday night in Vancouver, Saturday night in New York City, you know, and so every night becomes a Saturday night.
Yeah.
And I've seen people whose stage persona is drugs, you know, very much on the edge. That just doesn't work 7 nights a week,
Yeah.
because everybody shows up with a bag of something to curry favor with, hey, let me on the bus, I've got something, and it perpetuates itself, and tolerances get quite extreme. So you're not just a professional musician, you're a professional partier.
Yeah.
And it gets really dangerous.
Yeah. And that's another question, of course, is, you know, within that space, within that ecosystem where every night's a Saturday night, and you've got to bring it for those 20,000 people who are asking you to bring it for them. And that cultural expectation, how does an individual who has chosen you know, mental health and recovery, maybe to stop, maybe they've gone to rehab and but you know, they want to be in that world because that's part of who they are. How do they navigate that? Any ideas? And either one of you, maybe you have some stories of people who've done that successfully with some tips.
Well, I was just on the road with Randy Blythe from Lamb of God. He came out to sing with my band Pigface, and he's in recovery. I had 16 years sober myself. I'm not sober at the moment. But Randy, we stopped off in Dayton, Ohio. I forget the brew dog, the brew dog who make a punk IPA beer. He had a meeting with them, and he was handcrafting his own non-alcoholic ale, which, you know, it's actually really good. I tasted some, but I think that can be quite dangerous, you know. You have you know, but you let people deal with whatever they're dealing with in the way that they want to deal with it. And I think everyone is more open now about saying, hey, I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with that. And you always get, with a large group of people on the road, you always get somebody who was challenged by your sobriety. Oh, come on, never trust a man who does not drink. That was told to me. Well, you talk about peer pressure.
Yeah.
But I think more and more people are finding their own unique path through this minefield, frankly.
Yeah, it's interesting because Ace at Over the Bridge and I were looking at some data of the Facebook group, Over the Bridge, the community, the peer support community, over 1,100 members now. And the age demographic is kind of that, you know, 35 to 55. And we were talking about, you know, those are the people they've been doing this long enough to realize this is not a sustainable lifestyle. And I really want to actually still be, you know, performing and connecting with audience members and doing my craft, but I need to be in a health and wellness space, and I need to support my recovery, and I need to support my wellness, and so we see that big bell curve of folks there wanting that community to support them through some of these changes. I'm just going to make a note that I have some other questions here, but you can put live questions in the chat if anything that we've been talking about brings up a question or a comment or a concern for you. Please feel free to put it in the chat. Question for you, Martin. Does having a lifelong career in music affect your personal relationships? And if so, how?
Well, I mean, in so many ways. So there are, I'm married for 25 years, and I describe going on tour like in Shakespearean times, someone going off to war. All of those things apply. So it changes everything within the family. I think we're a circus family, it changes the relationships I have over time with musicians that I'm on vinyl or on CD with, who I've made music with, who are now no longer with us. That change, but it's very strange because the music is still there. So, we have a funeral and you say goodbye to someone, and here's this intense period of mourning. But the vinyl record reminds us, or the track on Spotify reminds us, or thank you, Facebook. Hey, 5 years ago, this, unexpected stuff, jarring stuff.
Yeah.
I think being a musician on the road has made me value relationships with people. And I think you get an idea of you're either needing support from people, or if you're blessed enough to be able to give to support to people, sending them something or checking in with them or taking care of them in some way. Take advantage of those moments, because you want to build up your safety net of karma or friends or people that are there to help you.
Yeah.
So all of these things have made me value, I think, more deeply friendships. And I was an asshole when I was 19 in a band with Johnny Rotten and drunk with bags of prescription speed. Like, I'm not an idiot. I would take bags of prescription speed across the border with my prescription. Hey, but we were idiots. We were rude idiots. And I'm fortunate to still be around and be older. I'm 60 years old now and 61, and still be around to nurture and value these friendships.
Yeah. And how do you, if you want to, again, maintain the wellness and maintain the personal relationships, how do you respond to the kind of pressure that we were just talking about on the road? This is a live question that came up. How does one really practically, how do you deal with the kind of pressure when you're living on the road? And Alana, happy to weigh in, because you deal with a lot of folks who are using your services too.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that, Alana?
Yeah, of course it's difficult because everyone kind of wants to fit in. But it's kind of going back to our own personal accountability. If we're all humans that know, what's good, what's bad, right and wrong, those kinds of things. And we know that if I drink 18 beers tonight, I'm not going to feel great tomorrow, and I'm not going to do my best performance, and chances are I'm going to get a bad review, and that's going to escalate. Saying no, and chances are it's the person who's pressuring you dealing with something themselves that they're externalizing onto you and pushing onto you. And I was always taught just to kill them with kindness, and no thank you, and if someone continues, then like that's that's a them problem, and it no longer becomes a you problem. And it's easier said than done, I know that, but when you value yourself and having to want to do better for yourself and your teammate and your fans and and the rest of your team, then making these choices that will be beneficial to you to just be your best, then yeah, stick up for yourself. You'd like do it. You're valuable. You are a valuable asset to this entire industry and to the rest of the world. So take care of yourself. This is your tool. So treat it right. You're going to make sure your tour bus has all the gas and the engine's oiled. So do that to yourself too. So yeah, I know it's easier said than done, but you really just have to, you gotta value yourself enough to stick up for it.
Yeah, I think that's a really important skill to even note in the whole tips and topics jar, to learn the skill through support, if required, to self-advocate, right? To really, to your point, connect to your inherent self-worth and to trust that value and begin to learn how to self-advocate and set some boundaries. And that's probably the best way to handle with that kind of pressure on the road or elsewhere, really.
Because you're there for a reason. Like, the team picked you because you have a set of skills that are assets to this whole thing, and that's where you're worth something. And people sometimes have a difficulty or a difficult time remembering that, but you're worth giving yourself exactly what you need, yeah, to make yourself run at a speed.
Yeah.
Speed.
I'm reading the question. We can't create at a high level without an out of body high. And
Oh, I think that the person, I'm not sure it's a question, but I think it's a comment around society tries to make us think that.
Yeah.
Right. And how do we so if we're buying into that just because of all that pressure, how do we connect? Again, it's connecting to that innate sense of value and connectivity and spirituality, right? Sorry, go ahead, Martin.
well, one of the things, I mean, I'm not sure that I disagree with that. I think, but I get there in a different way. So I can't be on stage because I run my business and I know how much the tickets were and I know what the sound system cost and how many miles we're driving and the hotel should have been a deal and it wasn't. And if this guitarist buys any more strings or and I can't function on stage with all of that going on in my head. So I'll start to throw myself around to exhaust myself. So I'm just thinking about breathing and getting through the song. And then I have a mirror ball that's suspended over by my cymbals on the right. And if I really can't get the stuff out of my head, I'll just start punching my mirror ball. And, I don't know if it's seeing my own blood or the intense pain of glass going into my knuckles, but that certainly is like, oh, okay, we're here now and let's do this. And maybe, I don't know what Elena would thinks about that activity, but it clears my head, puts me in the moment, and I definitely feel that's a device that I use.
I think that's a really interesting example of being present, right? Of really, you're actually being really present, even somatically, like you're doing stuff with your body to get really grounded and present, which is the opposite of what substances do, right? Substances kind of they disconnect us. So I think that's interesting. Alana, you want to weigh in on that?
It kind of reminds me, it's not as odd as you say, because it reminds me of a lot of people who get tattoos just to feel the pain, and that's how they're dealing with their anxieties or their depression, or they're living with bipolar disorder. And having the pain and seeing the blood and seeing the actual ink go in is part of their internalizing process, and that brings them to there. And that kind of reminds me of what you just said. It's just that coming back down in self-regulation. And I mean, people do it similarly when you're kickboxing or going boxing. You know, in acting, I've punched things so hard to get that passionate that my knuckles bled, and that's when I got it. And you know, it's almost that realizing of, oh, I actually have to put it in it, and that can be beneficial. I think, I mean, this applies to everything. It's everything in moderation. You know, if it comes to a point where it's a little too much blood or it's a little too much pain, then you need to kind of find a new way of self-regulation. And but it seems that you are able to know, what's my limit, this is it, if I hit here I need to come back down. And that's incredible that you have that process, and everybody has their own individual one. And I think if there's any tip, it's trying to notice what's your limit, whether it's a drink limit or a physical limit. If you know that you get social anxiety with being in a big group of people for too long, then don't stay for that long. Stay for, you know, if you know you have a 3-drink limit, stay within it. I'll do the OLG motto, you know your limit and play within it kind of thing. And it's, yeah, just self-regulation, noticing, being aware, and having that awareness of what's going on. And it's important. It's not easy, but it's important. And yeah, it just, Martin, all you're saying is that I'm noticing you have a self-regulation process, and that's awesome. That's great. Yeah. Yes.
You're going to be one heck of a scary wedding DJ, let me tell you, if you're
Whoa.
punching the mirrors. So it's interesting. I'm kind of connecting a couple of comments here, because we talked earlier about Martin's experience, and certainly we can all relate to folks who are self-medicating, right? Trying to deal with the stuff, and it comes across as partying, but often it's self-medicating. But what part of that is connected to, you know, in many ways, musicians and artists begin that journey for a love and a passion and almost a necessity to manifest that. And then they get out into this thing, and at first it's great, but then it's, you know, we talked about as a humans, it's difficult. What part of that sort of identity, like, you know, do you think it's possible that they get disconnected from that? And how is that playing out right now during the pandemic, which is, my whole life was based around playing music live, being on tour, being this person, communicating and connecting with people, and it's gone. What are your thoughts, Martin?
Well, I saw a lot of that May, June, July. People just floundering, and also people trying to recreate, just like trying to recreate a live show, you know, some innovative stuff at drive-ins, and like, yeah, but you know, my band Pigface, is 27 of us on stage, and it's a family, and we can't even be on a bus together, and the band can't be on stage together, never mind with an audience. But I think it's one of our jobs as musicians, as artists on the road, to make things work that don't, or make things work that other people can't make work. That's kind of the creativity. And so I remind myself, like, well, this is just another day on the road. What can we do? The equipment doesn't fit on the stage. The venue's closed. So you set up in the car park. We can't do this. 3 people are sick. How do we, you make it work. And so for the people who are floundering, I'd say, well, don't try and recreate a live show, because you won't. There's no sweat, there's no connection. But after a Pigface show, I love talking to people, but I can only talk to people for about an hour before I'm exhausted, lying in my bunk, nursing my wounds and crying myself to sleep because my knees are on fire, you know. But remove the Pigface show, and I can talk to people for 4 hours, and I can talk to somebody from New Zealand and El Salvador, and I can connect with all kinds of people in a much more intimate, positive way for a greater period of time than after a show. Even with the best intentions, sometimes you've got to get on the bus because you've got to drive 600 miles to the next show. So I'm concentrating on trying to find the silver lining, because what the hell else can we do? You know, I don't want to find the other lining.
And I think that's a great tip, Martin, for those who are comfortable with that kind of, direct communication and connectivity. And I love that there are so many other ways, and certainly globally, to connect with all of your fans and other collaborative artists and musicians. So if you have the wherewithal and the means and the skills and the comfort level to reach out, that's a fantastic tip for people, is try to find that connection that's missing at the live show and after. We have a question kind of associated with this from the live chat, which is on the flip side. How do we support those who are unable to even get their heads off the pillow? Those who are never, ever in one place for that long? How do we put words on the way we feel to family and friends who don't understand how fish out of water we feel right now?
That's tough.
Yeah.
It is difficult because it's hard. It's hard when you feel like you're talking to a wall and that nothing's resonating with anybody. That's a really tough question to answer. The only thing that's coming to mind is just to have those conversations, because you're reminding yourself why it is you started it in the first place. And it's kind of touches what we were just talking about, why we were doing it in the first place and why artists are doing it in the first place. And chances are that all of the people that are a part of this team or that are on the road are creatives in some way, shape, or form, and everybody is doing this for the same purpose, because they have a love of music and the arts and creation in whatever that may be. Everybody creates in their own kind of form, and it kind of, sometimes it gets to a point, I guess, especially when you reach a certain level of fame, where you're no longer creating for yourself and you're creating for other people. And now we're in this position where we can't do anything for anyone else, and we really have to focus on who were we creating for to begin with. And that's kind of a difficult self-reflection right there. And that makes it even harder to then express how you're feeling to other people, because you're kind of in this war with yourself and then trying to explain with other people who are never going to understand, because unless they're on the road with you or doing it with you, they won't have that perspective. So it's, I guess, ultimately what interests is a difficult question to answer. But if you can try your hardest to self-reflect and think about what it is that really means, what's really driving you, what's your purpose, why were you out there to begin with, and what is it that you're actually missing, what is that your driving force, how can you reinvent yourself to make it work for you. And then maybe that might be easier to have a conversation once you know what's really going on and what it is that you're really struggling with, because a lot of people, especially if they're your friends or family, should be open to a conversation to hear about how you're feeling and what it is you're going through, because that's your support system. So regardless of whether or not they know exactly what it is you're going through, we're all humans with the same blood and guts and bones on the inside. We can empathize with one another and find a similar level to understand.
Yeah, and I would just really explicitly invite anyone in the music industry who's feeling that way, that they're not being understood, that nobody really gets the whole fish out of water thing, is to connect with the community of Over the Bridge. I mean, that's the whole purpose of the community of Over the Bridge. People who work in the music industry, musicians and sound techs and roadies and event guys, everybody. And even if it's you're lying on the bed and you can't lift your head, get your phone, connect to the Facebook community for Over the Bridge, join some of the chats that Ace leads, where really it's an open opportunity to just talk to other people who actually do get it.
Yeah.
They totally get it. And then hopefully, that sense of connection is what drives everything. One of my favorite lines everywhere by Johann Hari is the opposite of addiction is connection, right? And what we really need to do now is to connect with this community. And so the first step might be just, dig in and start connecting with all the amazing things that Ace and the other folks at Over the Bridge are doing.
Well,
Yeah, there's one thing to remind yourself is just that you're not alone. You aren't alone.
Yeah.
Sorry, Martin, I cut you off.
no, it's okay. This whole fish out of water thing, though, it's kind of fish out of water squared, because we were already fish out of water with third shift
Exactly.
workers when everybody else. It's New Year's Eve, crazy. I'm pouring champagne over my. Yeah, I'm playing my drums right now because I'm being paid 4 times what I would normally get. It's Christmas. Yeah, we got a show tonight. It's St. Patrick's Day. So we're on these opposite schedules. We're coming home from work 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, where other people are going to work. So we're fish out of water.
Yeah.
And one thing I kind of go to, I think if I need energy in, my reaction is always to put energy out. And that's what we do. That's what we do on stage. We put energy out into the audience, and it comes back in different ways. A year later, 15 years later, 10 minutes later with the applause. But that's my go-to. And how can you put energy out? Many of us weirdly are shy as fuck. I'm really shy. I don't think anybody would ever say that. If you had to say 20 words about me, shy wouldn't be number 50. But so then the music and the stuff is how we communicate in this different way, and it facilitates conversations. So when you remove that, you're removing the way that we make friends and connect with people. It gets really difficult. But if we started doing my touring class, which I think Ace took at one point. We just started doing it free online. And there's a guy from New Zealand and a guy from El Salvador and some people in England. And we get together on a Monday night and a recap on a Saturday. And here's this little community. And I'm talking about what I know. And some people definitely want the touring information. Some people just want to hang out on a Monday night.
Yeah.
So if you don't have to think, what am I going to talk about? Cook an omelet. I make a great shepherd's pie. Maybe I'll do that one night.
That's what you should do.
Yeah.
Caters and DJs.
Caters and DJs. You got a whole side business here.
Come on.
Yeah. Then people could say, people said he's a terrible DJ, and he is, but also he can't cook. Fantastic.
The double whammy. Just as we start to wrap up, what if somebody's out there and they're just feeling despondent and it's been a long haul. It's been a long haul on everybody. To your point, Martin, just to the regular fish out of water, it's been a long haul, and then out of water, out of fish water. What's the one thing that you would say to just, and I know you can't motivate them, but what's the one thing that you might say to encourage people to wrap up, to wrap up the conversation that we've had, and just to pick one thing that they might choose to do moving forward? Alana?
Oh, sorry, I thought that was for Martin.
That's for both of you, actually.
So one thing I'd say for someone who, if someone has come to you and you don't necessarily know what to do, one thing to remind yourself, or even to simply say to that person, is, do you just need to vent, or would you like my opinion? And sometimes people just need to talk, and they just need to talk it out. And sometimes, as the person who's receiving it, you feel like you have to fix the situation right then and there. But sometimes someone just needs to be heard, and that is extremely important. So that's one thing I want to say for anyone who might be receiving it, and for someone who feels that they need to get the support. As we already said, you're not alone. You aren't alone. There are communities, there are other people who feel either similar or almost identically to you, and there are resources. So if you value yourself and understand how much you are worth, then take a chance just to get those resources and do what you need to make you feel good. Because that's it. Just you're number one.
Martin?
Well, yeah, it's difficult. I try and I love social media for the connections it gives us, and I'm always trying to. I'll see somebody make a kind of off comment, and I'll try and just direct message them or check in on them, like, "Hey, you okay?" You know, and sometimes it's like, "Yeah, shut up, your last album was crap," or sometimes it's like, "No," and it just you know, next thing you know, you're in it. But I think that um, as Alana said, and as Ace always says, just reach out, and you will be surprised. You will be absolutely surprised how fragile everybody is, how a tiny thing can make a huge difference. I tweeted like 6 months ago, I just tweeted, "You know something? You're fucking great. You fucking are. Go get him." You know, and I think I was talking to me. It was my own little self tweet, you know, and I tweeted it into the world so I could see it and go, "Yeah." And people are like, "Oh, thanks." I'm like, "What do you mean?" "Oh, somebody's being sarcastic without the asterisks." And then like 20 people are like, "You have no idea how much I needed to hear that."
Yeah.
And it was really shocking. So I think we all need to hear that. You know, a really good thing I saw today, that I was on Ace's on the Over the Bridge Facebook page, and there's Ace Peeler. "Ah, I'm dyslexic as fuck. Ah." And I'm like, you know,
He is.
Yeah.
yeah. It's like, "I've read this thing 15 times." And I'm like, yeah, I wish some of my freaking students would read something 15 times before they sent it. So it's like, the more any of us share, you never know the thing that you're going to share that will be somebody else's little bit of air in their tires at the end of the week, or at some point. You just never know. And we're used to making connections through music, but there's so many ways to make a really meaningful connection. And I think when we are making connections with music, I think in a different way, people are connecting with us, deeply with us. And you remove the music, and of course it's tragic, but we're still us, and you can still connect with other people. All of that stuff is still there.
Yeah, that's a really important reminder. And quite frankly, a great way to wrap up this conversation. So not only are you a terrible wedding DJ, and apparently terrible maker of shepherd's pie, but you are actually a great co-host in wrapping up our conversation today. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Certainly, I want to thank everybody for sending in the questions in advance. Obviously, to thank Alana and Martin for joining us and for sharing their thoughts and experiences and opinions and just having this conversation. And hopefully, in some way, there's been a connection for you. Hopefully, there's one little thing that you want to do differently. Maybe it's whatever that analogous, make one bag, then make the next bag, then make the next bag. Find something that gets you engaged with yourself so that you have some progress. And most importantly, if you would like to join Over the Bridge, join Over the Bridge. It's an incredible community of people who work within the music industry who get what you do and how you do it and all of the challenges and struggles and wonderment and amazing stuff that happens in the music industry. So please connect with Over the Bridge. It's just an amazing organization. And I'll just make note that if you want to reach out to Alana or Martin, their contact info and how to reach them and follow them, etc., will be in the show notes. And again, I'm Catherine, and it's been a great pleasure to once again represent Over the Bridge. Have a great night, everybody, and take the best of care. Cheers.